California has a communist little agenda going on, and I don't think any of you really want to live under those conditions. Now, I did do some research on how other states can live without California. How are they doing it? Well, Oregon, their economy is based on timber, fishing, and agriculture. Today, they are adding manufacturing and technology industries. Idaho has manufacturing, wholesale trade, financial services, agricultural, probably just potatoes, mining, and tourism. Iowa is livestock, crops, manufacturing, mining, and the service industry. Des Moines, Iowa is one of the major insurance centers. Nebraska, they have mining, logging, agricultural, which is mainly corn, and manufacturing. We offer timber, fishing, agricultural, technology, tourism, mining. We want to offer lower taxes, a lot less regulation, which will bring more companies back to California. How many companies have left California because of the regulations? Our timber industry is being completely destroyed by California's regulations, not because of lack of demand. People still need wood. They still need to build the houses. Okay, we have an opportunity to rebuild those mills, to start logging our forest instead of letting it burn. That under California regulation we can't. There's one little critter or another that needs to be protected. Last year, 19,000 people moved to Nevada from California. How many have left for other states? A lot of people retire and leave. They sell their houses and they get the heck out. And can you blame them? Can you blame them? I mean, we're being overregulated, overtaxed. You know, they're taxing everything, our gasoline, our air. Yes, they are taxing the air that you breathe. On behalf of my friend, whom you all know is unable to speak here today, this movement is not just for more representation. It can be an extremely historical moment, and Lassen County needs the opportunity to have a say in the creation of the new state government. How amazing of an opportunity would it be for Lassen County to send a delegate to help write a new constitution? And as far as economics are concerned, money is like water, and it travels the path of least resistance. Without representation, we will never have that opportunity. The people that are representing us right now have a little agenda. Pay attention to what their agenda is. I heard a lot of stories growing up from my parents. I didn't see it myself. I heard it from my parents and my siblings who lived it. That's the path that we're going in, is communism. It really is. I know it sounds unbelievable, but everything that's happening here happened in Cuba. You all need to know that. Like I said, I didn't live it, but my family did. So this is our opportunity to break away from Southern California and their little agenda and go on our own. We can do this. There's 49 other states that do not rely on California. Stop being afraid. If 49 other states can survive without California, so can we. It's time for 51.
Anybody else wish to speak? Stand, please.
to hear revisionist history. It's almost insulting to hear somebody, all of you that have spoken before, twist facts the way you've done. This 75-year-old project, and I think 75 is pretty close to what you've been, it's come to us recently in Lassen County, but this is a 75-year-old folly. It lives and breathes ideology, but it's not one iota based on fact, or reality for that matter. Lassen County is one of the rural counties in California that takes more than it gives. 38 million people in California. We're the richest, most powerful state in the union. But Lassen County is a welfare county. It's one of those counties that relies on more than 60% from the state of California. 38 million people support us. More than 60%. The budget in California, the budget in Lassen County is $123,738,000. That's for fiscal year 2014 and 2015. Of that, over 72 million is subsidized by people outside of Lassen County. That's never going to change. We're a rural community. We choose to live here. I have 6 generations in California. My husband's people came to Santa Clara County in 1849, and my husband's uncle was the first judge in Santa Clara County. We have a long history in California. Without California's welfare dollars, and I don't care if you believe this or not because you're programmed right now, but CAL FIRE is gone. Carl Moyer funds are gone. All the ag grants and all the ag subsidies that the state of California provides for Lassen County, gone. Social services, as Mr. Pyle relayed earlier, they're gone. Conservancy tax exemptions, gone. Road maintenance, 36, all the roads, state roads that go through California, gone. No maintenance. We're on our own. Tobacco settlement that's going to support our pool, which these gentlemen have designated to pay the $200,000 a year from that California money, gone. Make no mistake, there will be no one to pay taxes. There's no tax base with the state of Jefferson in Lassen County. $123 million ranching industry here, which recently the Lassen County Times has published an article. That will be our tax base. We don't have, the forests have been, in Lassen County, have been overdone. If you don't believe me, just go on Google Earth or Google. Put your own address in there, and then move around the mountains. There's no timber left here. They clear-cutted a lot of it, but it's gone. That's why we don't have any timber here, because it's been overdone. Google Earth. Put your own address in there. Move it around and look at the tops of our mountains, what we've done to them. That's a fact. Who will support our schools, road maintenance, hospitals, and even the sheriff's department? The ranchers. We're going to tax them to holy high hell. They're our only industry here. The prisons are owned by the state of California. The court is owned by the state of California. If you think the state of California is going to just hand this property over to this little new state, it's going to come at a price. And Lassen County doesn't have the money to pay, what was it, $30 million to build that courthouse? Where are we going to get $30 million to buy that courthouse from? What I'm personally offended is that 5 men here have the ability to devalue my property. I own property in Westwood. If a new state comes in, who's going to pay what I could get in the state of California? Who's going to pay for state of Jefferson property? It's going to, realistically, it's going to be devalued. You have no government, you have no power to, because you have no credit rating, you have no power to borrow, you have no credit rating, you just have a bunch of people that need to go someplace where your ideology can be fulfilled. Lassen County just celebrated its 150th birthday. I want to be here, hopefully, God willing, I hope to be here for its 200th anniversary or birthday. The ranchers, we have 3 on the board. The ranchers, if that's the only industry, and we have to tax them to make up the $72 million we just threw away from California subsidies, how are they going to? What price are they going to set to sell their hay, their alfalfa, their farming? What prices are they going to set that they can get to offset the taxes that they're going to be assessed? It's going to be worthless. No, they're going to be selling the ranches for pennies on the dollar. I'm going to sell my house for pennies on the dollar. There wouldn't be anything here. I'm here because I'm in California. We've got all these generations of people in California. It has to stay California. No government is perfect. Whining because you want more representatives than Idaho or Oregon. That's just whining. I mean, it's just whining. You want that kind of representation, then I can name 11 states that you can go to that will give you that representation. But to overturn Reynolds versus Sims, and we're going to use our tax dollars, our Lassen County precious dollars, to support their folly in overturning a Supreme Court ruling that established equal representation. You know, that part I don't get. We have equal representation. We're no different than Nevada or all 50 states. We all have equal representation because of Reynolds versus Sims. The state of Jefferson wants more representation to represent their ideology. And I'm sorry, the country doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. Thank you.
Lady in the back. Good. We are running short of time, so let's kind of stay to the point. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cindy Ellsworth. Hello, Richard. Richard and I were colleagues. I am the retired Sierra County Treasurer Tax Collector, and Richard and I worked on a number of projects together. It's good to be back in Susanville. It's been a long time. I am representing the Keep It California movement, and I just would like, since my orientation is the finances part of this, I know that there's a lot of emotion around, the grievances and perceived lack of freedom and representation here. But be that as it may, my concern here, and what I'd like to communicate, is about the financial situation. Many of the impacts of the state of Jefferson proposal require careful consideration. We need to make sure we have all the facts before a decision is made to go down this long and difficult road. We need to have thorough, independent financial evaluation and public hearings with all the stakeholders, schools, public utility districts, everyone involved, the business community, and require a vote of the residents. And I'm glad to see that your resolution does put this to the voters. Not all counties are doing that. Otherwise, it would only take a yay vote of 3 people on our boards of supervisors to make this very serious decision that has far-reaching consequences for families and businesses. There are 20 counties that are targeted for the state of Jefferson. One county has already opted out by a vote of the people. That's still North County. And the school districts and special districts receive more funding from the state than they pay in taxes, as the lady who just spoke indicated. How will Jefferson fund the schools, the law enforcement, the road maintenance, social services, the courts, with even less funding than it has right now, with a 0 corporate tax rate, lower personal income tax, sales tax rates, and no fees? Families will be impacted by drastic cuts in school funding, since over 50% of the K-12 budgets, schools' budgets, come from the state. In addition, there may be only 2 state colleges and no UCs. There may be no state colleges in the state of Jefferson. Butte County has not adopted this. Humboldt is very unlikely to do that. So where will our kids go to school? Are you willing to pay $22,000 additional tuition per year to send your kid to a UC? I mean, I'm not. That will limit our kids' educational goals and certainly will increase their college debt, which is a terrible problem already. Basic economic wisdom says that businesses need good infrastructure, utilities, and regulatory certainty. New and relocating businesses need predictability to invest in the community. How many years will it take before the state of Jefferson establishes a fully functional government and laws? What business is going to be willing to take a chance on Jefferson until all of that settles down? You say it's all about representation and want one senator for each county. Certainly Sierra County, where I'm from, with 3,000 people, will be heard loud and clear. But Placer County, which is also one of the counties on the target, with 367,000 people, are not going to be particularly happy about their representation. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled 50 years ago that states must have representation using the principle of one person, one vote. If the goal is to overturn that decision, are we prepared to pay dearly in time and treasure? I don't think so. I would urge the board to not to pass this resolution. But if you pass it, please make sure that there is a vote of all the people in the November 2016 election. You'll get a better turnout then. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Anybody else like to speak? Being none, we'll bring it back to the board. Pleasure of the board.
I had a couple of questions. First off, is I think I asked this question last time, Bob. We've had several votes in the past on the state of Jefferson. Are any of those applicable to today, or do they still stand if they were passed or denied? Did you look into that much at all?
I'm sorry to say I did not have that much So I'm left with the general impression that whatever those political statements are that occurred in the past, there's a period at the end of that sentence. That's my initial reaction.
Right. And then my next question was, is in here, you talk about if this movement, the Jefferson State of Jefferson is unsuccessful,
Yes.
well, then you would be willing to join in a court challenge to the residence deal. Can you change that some way so that they can both run concurrently instead of having to wait for one to succeed or fail before you go to the other one?
Well, as I understood it, Mr. Supervisor, the premise of the petition and declaration was such that in order to have a serious challenge to Reynolds v. Sims in federal court, you have to have standing. In order to have standing, you have to be harmed. In order to be harmed, you have to essentially make the petition and declaration and essentially have it denied, for lack of a better way of putting it. And so you don't get to federal court, or at least you don't get past the clerk, unless you're turned down by Sacramento. That's my understanding. I think that's consistent with the materials that were presented. So in short answer to your question, no, I don't think that, I mean, you can run them simultaneously, but I don't think you have any realistic chance of establishing standing. I still have opinions about whether you have chances. But if you try and run a challenge to Reynolds v. Sims before you attempt to present this to the legislature, I think you have definitely sealed your fate.
Okay.
I hope I answered your question.
You did.
Very good.
Any other questions from the board?
No, I have a comment. The sentence granted subject to approval of the voters, this was key to me in this whole thing. Let the people decide.
Right, that's what, when I made the motion 2 weeks ago, that was the premise of the whole motion, that people will get to vote on this in Lassen County.
And that was the spirit in which the declaration and petition was drafted, that you today conditionally grant that, or you conditionally adopt the resolution conditioned upon going to the June 2016 primary for advisory vote. We would have to come back at some point in the near future to ask you to adopt a resolution calling the question, but that's more perfunctory than anything.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Jim?
I just want to state a couple things. I think, first of all, it should be ultimately a vote of the people. The problem is that the supporters of the Jefferson State movement, by having the boards adopt these declarations, are putting out and representing that Lassen County has taken this position. I mean, we took the vote 2 weeks ago, and by 7 o'clock that night, they had already posted on their website and announced to the world that Lassen County was backing the Jefferson State. And what we had done is given direction to staff to bring back this declaration in a revised form and to have the form we're having today. And any action that we take based on this document is subject to the ratification and support by the voters at the next election in the primary of June 2016. So I think to represent that as saying Lassen County is like right behind Jefferson State, I think is a gross misrepresentation of the facts, and I think it's consistent with some of the factual errors and historical inaccuracies that have been presented by the proponents of the measure. As to the declaration itself, I think the only paragraph that has any real merit and should be, I think, the focus of not only the Jefferson State folks, but should be the focus of this board, is that last whereas, in which it's not an either-or type of thing, or we can't get there until we get the harm created. You know, I presented at the previous meetings stacks of books, and we have 165 years of abuse of that relationship between the state and the localities, not just here locally. I mean, we enumerate in the fourth, fifth, whereas, you know, as Lassen County, this was being added to it based on our discussion 2 weeks ago, and Aaron had the one that dealt with the graph and some of the other things. I mean, those, you might say, grievances have been long-standing, and this is just a short list. I mean, I think you could create a list of grievances that have accumulated over the last 165 years that would fill this binder in terms of whereas and So this notion, and I think this goes to what council had addressed, this notion that we have to go out and create this harm against us as a basis of seeking relief at the court, I totally reject, because I think that harm already exists, and I think it's well documented. And to go through this charade in which people say, oh, it's not going to happen, we're doing it because we feel good or whatever, that's a bunch of poppycock. I think we ought to be serious about it. We fought this battle 23 years ago. We've taken this issue. I mean, I understand the passion of these people in the room, because I had that passion, still do, and lived that passion when we pursued the 51st state thing with Statham back in 91 and 92. So that, to me, is, I want to move beyond that, and let's get to the heart of it. And having the opportunity for this Reynolds v. Sims case that was brought forth, and I appreciate counsel sharing with me, a copy of that. It's available online. Anybody can pull it down and read it. And you really read what the court did. And I got to tell you, there is some merit to the arguments that were advanced by the majority, by Warren and his associates. But I think the merit that was roughshod over was the Harlan dissent. And I think the Harlan dissent was very clear. And what's interesting, you have to go back and understand the late 1860s. The Civil War had just ended. They were dealing with, how do you blend the races? I mean, they were dealing with, all the discrimination and other problems. And the problem that brought Reynolds v. Sims to the court's attention was the reapportionment practices of the state of Alabama, which every 10 years a census is done, and you have to adjust your representation based upon those census. They hadn't reapportioned Alabama since like 1900. They'd gone 60 years in which they left their good old boy system in place at the expense of everybody else. They pretty much thumbed their nose at not only their constituents, but the world. And that's what Reynolds v. Sims was trying to address. And in terms of addressing that issue, they established this standard in the majority opinion, which I don't think was the unintended consequences that affected 38 states that had something similar to the federal plan. The notion of this advanced by the Jefferson State proponents that we have been wrong because of the fact they took away our senator from our county. We never had a senator from Lassen County, and most counties did not. From 1850 until 1930, the state senate, which was only been 40 senators, and that's established in the original Constitution and the revised Constitution of 1879, has always had a body of 40 senators, and it was distributed based upon population. Now, granted, in 1850, there were 27 counties, and there were like 300 and some thousand people living in California. And the odds